You're listening to Neurodivergent Mates. Hello and welcome to another episode of Neurodivergent Mates. I'm your host, Will Wheeler, and today I'm joined with my good friend, Natalie Phillips-Mason, to talk about neurodiversity in retail beyond the shopfront. Nat, what's going on, my friend?
Hello, Will. I know we haven't spoken in a little while, and then we just can't stop chatting.
Oh, you're
So
shafting me, mate. You've been shafting me, mate. What's going on? Nah.
no,
For those of you who don't know, Nat's actually been on an awesome holiday in Greece, correct?
yeah, I feel kind of guilty talking about it, but it was about 10 years in the planning phase, and we did just come back for a bit of a family reunion in Europe, and it was pretty awesome, actually. It's hard to get back into Melbourne, cold Melbourne weather, but here we are.
Do you know what really surprises me about when you go to Europe for like a holiday, right? You'll go to some places where like it snows, and I know it's summer over there at the moment, but it's actually hot. It's hot in places that it snows, correct?
I didn't see anywhere that snowed. We had such a heat wave over there.
Oh, no. What I mean is like it snows in winter, but then in their summer, it's still incredibly hot there, right?
Yeah, and I think it just depends on Europe's so diverse, which is, such a good connection to our conversation. But there, Europe as a continent, there's just so many different cultures and subcultures and landscapes, and it's just such a magnificent part of the world. So, and we're so far over here, aren't we? So when we go, we've got to go and do it properly. So that's what we
got
to
make the most of it. I totally agree with you there. I lived over there for a few years. Oh, you lived over there for a while too, didn't you?
Yeah. We lived over there in a previous life, so we kind of went back to the places that we lived as well.
Had it changed much?
It's changed a lot. London's changed a huge amount, actually, which was interesting. Some of the other locations haven't, but yeah, I think it's really important to see other parts of the world occasionally.
Totally. But look, what we'll do, we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. But what I might do for anyone whose first time this is listening, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe, like, and follow to all of our social media pages. We're available on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Do whatever you do on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. Give us a like, whatever you can do to help with the algorithm. I would really appreciate it. Also, too, if you haven't already done so, please check out the work we're doing with Neurodiversity Academy at neurodiversityacademy.com. Got some really cool stuff happening there coming up shortly. So stay tuned. Now, just a bit of a warning before we start. Some discussions may be triggering. If you need help, please reach out to a loved one or emergency services. We're not doctors. This is a space for sharing experiences and strategies. You're not a doctor, are you, Nat?
No, not the last time I looked. Definitely not.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I ask is because we do have doctors on here sometimes. So I sometimes feel like a bit of a goose when I'm like, we're not doctors. I'm like, well, actually, we are doctors. But in this case, unfortunately, we are not. Could be fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it. But also, too, for all of our listeners, if you would like to ask some questions while we're going through today, please, while we're on the live version, which we are currently doing right now because it's a live podcast, please put it into the comments there. And if it's something we think that would be cool to share, we'll definitely put it up on the screen, whatever like that. And hopefully we can answer those questions. Nat, are you ready to rock and roll, my friend?
I am. Let's go.
You're born ready, right?
Some days I feel like I was.
All good. Now, look. Yeah, totally. So what we're going to be covering, like I said, is neurodiversity in retail, so beyond the shopfront. So, I think for yourself, Nat, I think it'd be great if you could share a little bit about your background and what drew you to the intersection of neurodiversity in retail.
Sure can. First of all, I'm a she, her. hers. So they're my pronouns. I live in Melbourne. I'm the mum of 2 daughters, and the first element of my life that I describe these days is the fact that I'm one member of a mixed neurotype family, and I think that's a really important context setter for our conversation, and it's an important part of why I'm choosing to do the work that I do. So that means that both in my immediate and my extended family, there are people who have been clinically diagnosed with some co-occurring neurodivergences. We have people in the family who are discovering their neurodivergence later in life. We have people who probably don't realise that they are neurodivergent. So we've got, that whole mixed bag, as I think many families do. And really, I've been working in the change management space for, I think it's coming on 30 years now, and part of my career has been working in the retail sector as well, in head offices, so not necessarily in shop fronts, but in the head office space. So as part of that, I've had the experience of working on and leading teams that have worked on all different parts of the retail, value chain. So everything from, buying through to supply chain, and then what happens in store. And so, what's prompted me to combine all of that together, as well as being a parent of a neurodivergent young adult, is 2 things. And the first is I'm really passionate about talent and the employee experience. I've worked with a lot of HR teams in my time. I've sat on leadership teams, and I think the way that I think about talent is really driving a lot of the motivation that I do in this space. But I also really care about customer experience, and I think and you and I have been in numerous conversations over the years. The theme that keeps coming through, particularly since I started kind of really going down the rabbit hole in around 2018 in this space, was every conversation I had with someone, and proudly neurodivergent people that I was kind of interviewing or chatting with, there'd always be some reference to shopping. And I couldn't get away from this theme of shopping. And so as I was working in retail, the 2 things were really pinging in my brain a lot. And I thought, why is it that shopping can be a really difficult and challenging experience for some people? What is it in our environments that make that difficult for some people? Not everyone, but, a lot of the themes that were coming back was just find it really hard going through shopping centres or crowded stores, or and it was really having a deep impact on people. And I think if you think about the retail sector, it employs so many people. In fact, I put this on LinkedIn today. Retail employs about 10% of the Australian population. And so you can imagine, from all these job opportunities that are out there for people, are we making it harder because we're not educating workplaces and teams on neuro-inclusive practice? And what are we doing from a customer experience lens? So I kind of just decided to keep going, and hoping I could elevate the conversation. And we went and did some research as well, because there was a lot of stories and qualitative information, but there wasn't a whole lot of solid data around the experience. So late 23, we went out and I commissioned my own research, and we surveyed 600 Australian shoppers and got some really cool data points around what are their experiences in store, and how's that different really from an online experience? And they're completely different.
So out of curiosity, right? So you did a lot of your research about in-store. Did you think about anything that happens out of store as well? So I think a big thing that probably is a bugbear of mine is even just parking my car. If I know that the shops are going to be busy to park my car, I'm like, and I can tell you right now, where I live, there's a Woolworths and Coles, seriously, walking distance down the road, right? I could go park my car down there, but it's really difficult. So I drive like 5 kilometers the other way to a shopping center where I know I'm going to get a park like that. And I just feel so much better.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting point. I don't know that there's anyone, well, I have problems finding where I park my car in shopping centres, and I think that's a big thing. In our study, we didn't delve, and this is the first of a number of studies we're going to want to do, and I've got some particular areas I want to focus when we do our next study. I've got a lot of qualitative information about people finding it really hard to go back and find their cars. Our research probably focused mainly on what happens when you are planning to visit, because that predictability piece and that wayfinding piece actually starts way before you enter a shopping centre, right? Particularly a big shopping centre.
Well, I know for myself, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to the shopping centre right now because it's going to be packed, for example, right? So I might be like, oh, sweet, it's like 6 o'clock. Everyone would have left by now, and I know it'll be a lot easier. So yeah, you're dead right. I'm thinking about it way before I go.
Yep. And so what can shopping precincts and brands do, for example, on their website to tell people when, for example, foot traffic might not be the heaviest, so you can help people plan? Or there's a lot of there's a few brands that are doing some really cool stuff around queue busting. So if you want to go and buy a pair of shoes, for example, there are some shoe brands now that allow you to book in advance and book a slot that you can just rock up at that time and book. So there's these really interesting things happening. And quiet hours are happening in a few different supermarkets and things now. And I actually got to see an electronics retailer in London when I was there recently, who are the first electronics retailer in the UK that are actually doing a quiet hour every business day at 9 o'clock till 10 o'clock. And so I got to see what it is that they do. How do they operationalize that, which was really cool. And then I got to see what happens at 10 o'clock when things come back on. And
what did happen out of curiosity?
So the lights dim. That's, pretty much.
Okay, yeah.
They actually turn off. So they're electronics, right? So they do everything from small goods like vacuum cleaners to computers to technology stuff, all sorts of stuff. And so they turn off all their in-store signage as much as they can. So about the only thing that's on is the little computer screens, and they're all kind of blacked out. They turn off all their big screens. So they turn off as much in-store electronic signage as possible. They turn down the lighting, and it's quiet. You walk in and it actually is quiet, and they're on a high street, so outside's loud. But they also don't stop people from having a personalized experience. So for example, they were telling me about a customer that came in, and this particular lady had a young autistic son. And she used quiet hour to be able to hear how loud a vacuum cleaner was, so that she could actually hear how loud it would be in her house. So really interesting different scenarios that people have, and I think the one thing that's really interesting about quiet hour is the feedback that you get from customers who aren't necessarily sensory sensitive. But, a lot of people find that quieter space to shop. Like I would find a quieter space to eat in a restaurant. To be honest, I veer away from loud restaurants now. I just find them really, really hard to sit in. So it's just really interesting. And staff really like the quiet. They can actually focus on what they're doing a little bit differently.
Wow, that is interesting. It is interesting. Because, if you think about it, right, if let's say you're working at a CD shop. Are there even CD shops anymore?
I think it's like a JB Hi-Fi or like
a JB Hi-Fi or something
audio,
like
right?
that, right? Yeah, audio. And there's music playing, all of that. I think that would do my head in.
So the really interesting thing about that call out, and I thought the same, is that there are some retail brands understanding how to attract employees, a really diverse group of employees. So I asked somebody who worked who works at JB, and I said, don't you find it really like pretty sensory overwhelming? And they said, you know what? I actually find it great because JB don't have a uniform. So JB let you wear, and believe me, I'm
Feel
not
more
plugging JB over
comfortable.
anything else, but I think it's another really great example. If you are forced to wear clothing that is really uncomfortable for you, if you can't bring your own identity into the store, that can make a difference to people. So people think, neuro-inclusive retail, and they automatically think, well, it's just about quiet hour. It's not. It's actually about a whole lot of other elements. How cluttered is your store? What's all the different layers of sensory input? But also, if you love music, if you've got a really deep focused interest in music, then working in a music store where you can connect with customers and talk about music is a really cool thing. So that's why
totally.
I think the retail sector just offers a lot. And I think,
interesting. Well, I think, and I only just realized it when we started talking about this, but I think that flows into this next question well. So from your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges neurodivergent individuals face when working in or shopping at retail stores? And, I think you hit the nail on the head with some of those right there.
Yeah, and look, I don't speak on behalf of anyone, right? Because I'm happy to share with you kind of what people have shared with me, and certainly what our research has told us. And I think shopping and working in are two very different things, but they're really tightly connected. And I think some of the challenges that have been shared with me are, potentially needing more breaks during the day, and some retail environments allow for that and some don't, just like some hospitality environments might allow for that. So how do we give people breaks at the right, at times that will help them just have some time or regulate or whatever they need? So that can be a challenge. I think I think the sensory environment can always be challenging for people, but again, retail is one of those sectors where you can work front of house, you can work behind the scenes. If you love data and analytics, there's heaps of opportunity there. If you love merchandising, or you are more of a creative, you love the creative space, there's all these different layers within retail that are great. But I think if you're working on a shop floor, just that ability to be able to work at times that suit your patterns and when you've got that productivity sweet spot stuff happening, some of that can be a bit of a negotiation. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people who have not had great experiences, and I'm sure there are plenty of people out there, and I hope we get to have some conversation about that. But certainly what I think is really important is that we keep the education up and we keep the conversation up. And the more that you've got, say, a hidden disabilities sunflower program happening, and that is happening in more and more retailers and more shopping centres, you've got to educate your staff. You have to educate your staff. So, I think the way in which shifts and workforce planning happens can be a bit of a challenge. When it comes to shopping, what our research absolutely told us with some really compelling data is the sensory environment of stores that, have always historically been about bells and whistles and sound and lights and smells and, all of that overlaying sensory stuff can be really hard for many people. I think that's definitely a thing. I think the crowds are definitely nothing that, people don't love crowds, and people, I think can avoid the shopping experience when there's Christmas happening or there's, Black Friday happening. And I don't know what your experience is with any of that, but it can be really difficult. Navigation and wayfinding.
Well, I think, I think with me, so like I spoke about the parking, That's a real difficult, like frustrating. It's more like, oh man, I can't even, like I've driven into places and driven straight back out again, you know. And then also too, what you may find is that you've got other frustrated people there too, right? So that can cause like more, you know, for your, I don't know, maybe ADHD frustration to kick off, things like that. But also too, I think what gets on my nerves is like, especially because I'm ADHD, I just want to get in there, get my stuff. But then I'll have people who are just walking around slow as, you know, yeah, you know, I'm having a good time. And that's fine. But for me, it's like, get the hell out of my way. You're another person in my way. You know what I mean? So it's really frustrating. So yeah, you know, I think I can sort of handle it in small doses. Like I've had to say to my wife a few times, like, come on, I've got to go. I just can't handle this anymore. Where she's happy just to, you know, look at stuff, and I'm like, nah, I gotta get the hell out of here, you know.
And
but
it's physical, right? It has a physical effect on you. It's got, you know, it does trigger this fight-flight response from people that they just need to. People have told me that they've literally, you know, got a shopping trolley or a cart and they just leave it and they go because it's just.
I don't think I've ever gotten to that point, to tell you the truth, but I could understand why, because you might be like, you know what, I can't be stuffed waiting for this huge line. You know, what's going on here or whatever like that. It can definitely be hard. But I tell you what, moving into the next question here, how can retail environments become more inclusive and welcoming for neurodivergent customers?
So we've kind of talked about a few different things that we're seeing that's happening, but I honestly feel like the first point has to be educating your staff on the whole, you know, having a modern disability conversation too, you know, and what that, you know, what that experience can be, and the fact that disability is so diverse. You know, it's not physical disability. There's a lot of non-physical disability. You've got people who, like I said, might communicate in their way, might not want to be approached in store, to be hassled to buy something, might not, you know, want to, you know, might just want their own space and time. And if you haven't trained your staff in all those elements, it can make it really uncomfortable for people. So, you know, I think that education has to be first. I think retailers understanding the sensory environment that they're building is just critical. You know, that fluorescent lighting, as an example, is actually really harsh for lots of people. So I recently have been having kind of vestibular migraines, which I've never had in the past, and it's triggered by light. So if I walk into stores with fluorescent lighting, it has an impact on me physically now that it would never have had on me 10 years ago. And I think that's the thing. This is not just about, you know, a few customers that might be coming in and out of your store. This is, how do you create an environment that is comfortable for everybody? So I think that sensory environment and understanding the impact of multiple layers of sensory input on your system is really important. Understanding social cues and, you know, and that sort of thing, that came through really strongly in our research too. So lots of people don't necessarily want to ask for assistance in store, or some people might find that quite uncomfortable. So how can you use signage in store to actually communicate to customers so, you know, self-serving kiosks is one really good example. If you don't want to be talking to someone as you're going through checkout, self-service kiosks are really good from that perspective for some people. So how can you have, you know, can retailers start using communication boards in store? If you're a shoe shop, a kid's shoe shop, and your kids have got sensory needs that they can't necessarily articulate, then something like communication boards with pictures on it could be really useful. So how do you start thinking about all the different ways that you can connect with your customers so that they can come into your store, have a good experience, get what they need, So I think
Yeah,
there's a
no.
lot of different practices like that, and I think that I hope to see a lot more innovative stuff like that happening.
So I gotta say one thing, right? Another thing that ticks me off, right? And probably a lot of people see this. Let's say Coles and Woolworths now. Like I don't know, when I was younger, it didn't seem to be like this, but it feels like, right, that every afternoon, right, they're all there packing the shelves. There's pallets everywhere. There's these trolleys with food like packed up,
Yeah,
and like it's like a maze that you got to get around. And I
yeah,
find that the most frustrating thing. And look, I get it. I'm sure Woolworths is probably trying to cut like costs there by like not having to pay like night rates and things like that. So they're getting it to do it through the day, all of that. But I tell you what, not just neurodivergent people. I've seen some like disabled people in wheelchairs and that can't get past,
yeah.
some of these things because there's a pallet in the middle of the bloody
Really
aisle.
interesting point. Really interesting point. Look, I have to say that these are big ecosystems, right? So you're not
Mhm.
talking about changes that can happen really quickly and really simply. Like every time you make a change in store or through the supermarket network, it's a huge effort, right?
Mhm.
But to your point, yeah, I wonder if those conversations are actually happening in the leadership teams of those retailers to go, or are they even getting their customer feedback on that sort of
Mm.
stuff? Because that's where
Mm.
I'd be starting first. So yeah,
Mm.
I think it's a really interesting point. I mean, there's no doubt that clutter makes it really frustrating for people, but when you're talking about a wheelchair not being able to get through an aisle, like
Mm.
that's yeah,
That's
it's not.
bad,
Yeah.
And
So
do
I'd
you know what?
like go on.
But you know what, right? Like the way I see it as well is it's not good for the workers because your customers are getting probably pissed off with the workers who are just doing their job. It's not their fault,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not because it's they're doing anything wrong, but because that's the way these big organizations are doing their things. And these poor people are probably copping the brunt of some of that.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to unpack what the data is on when they are doing this, replenishment, which is effectively
Mm.
what they're doing. They're replenishing
Mm.
stock. When you think about a supermarket, I mean, that's almost a constant activity, right? So
Mm. Mm. Mm.
it'd be interesting. You've given me something to deep dive into off the back
To
of this
think about it, eh? Yeah, 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 yeah. Just remember me, right?
conversation.
Hey,
Yeah.
sorry, moving on from that. Sorry, did I say that one? No, 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 there's another one. So what strategies or adjustments can retailers use to better support neurodivergent employees on the shop floor? So we sort of did cover that, right? Or did
We
you want
covered
to
it a
say?
bit, and again, I think because everyone's different, this is a great topic
Mm,
to actually talk to neurodivergent employees about, right? They're the
mm,
people
mm,
that should be giving retailers the first, or certainly, um, retailers should be asking their staff what it is that they need to work best. But
mm,
I just think really that concept of choice and predictability and autonomy, which actually everyone needs, and what that means for neurodivergent employees, making sure that people feel safe at work and that there are sensory environments or sensory friendly environments that they can regulate in. And I had this conversation, even with brands, and I've done some education sessions with supply chain, so even in a big kind of warehouse, you think about a warehouse that might supply a Coles or a Woolworths or whatever,
mm, mm,
these principles hold true in all parts of retail because making sure people feel sensory, comfortable in whatever environment they're working in. You don't have to be working in an office for that. It can be any
mm,
environment.
mm,
So thinking about clothing, thinking about break times, thinking about aligning people's jobs to where they've got their interests. All of these
mm,
principles should apply in all workplaces.
mm,
Um, how how you're holding, changes in processes, and how you're teaching people about, any changes that are coming up, making sure that people have enough time to process those changes, and how they learn about how to change.
Or even technology as well, right? Like, if they're going to be using certain technology, how are they trained up on it? If they're having an issue with it, what's the process with that? They might be afraid to come and say something because, they keep stuffing it up, where it might be just something really simple.
Absolutely. And even things like, how do you, all that kind of beautiful topic of performance conversations and, all of that stuff, everything that we talk about from a neuro-inclusive practice perspective applies to this sector. So, I think that there's a massive opportunity for a sector that's so large, that has so much appeal for so many people. And we know that, there are definitely certain communities within our society that are having more trouble accessing work. And so how can we, consider some of these elements when we think about, how we make sure everyone can participate in work and earn a living and, get up and be able to participate. So I think there's lots more that can be done.
Yeah, no, totally. And, I think a big thing, like definitely the uniform type of stuff, I don't think anyone would really realize that like a uniform could be a sensory issue. Do you know what I mean? So, making, I suppose in a lot of retail shops, people are wearing uniforms a lot of the time. You don't just go in and wear whatever. And it was actually interesting because, I was speaking to a manager of one of the TAFEs here in New South Wales, and he does a lot of the cooking stuff, right? And he was saying that with some of like, I don't know if it's the aprons or something like that, even some of them feel like really scratchy to wear and all of those. So, being mindful of those types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how can you build some choice into that? So if people, do need to wear a uniform, and I understand there are many brands there that have a uniform and it's there for a reason. But can you, what accommodations can be made around that if it's really uncomfortable? And if that's so I think there's lots of stuff like that.
Totally. And moving on from that, right? Do you think staff training on neurodiversity should be a priority to retailers? If so, what should that training be? And I'm assuming you're going to say yes to this, because you'd probably say, go do my training, right?
Well, no, I'd be happy for them to do your training too. I'd be happy for them to do anyone's training if it is affirming, and if it is modern, and if it is lived experience based, and if it's, I don't care what training people do, as long as they're getting the right training. There's plenty of people out there who are delivering amazing stuff in this space. I think that so the answer to your question is yes. And I think that it's really difficult to know how to do better if you don't know better. And I think it's absolutely necessary. This is a sector that serves, most of the community every day of the week.
But can I say one thing on this, right? Is training, totally agree, right? Especially when it's done properly, all of that, right? But the problem I get is the attitude towards that training is sometimes the problem. It might be like, man, we got to do like this training, and it's almost like saying, well, look, dude, if you don't want to do it, there's the door, see you later. It sometimes feels like I'm hitting my head against a brick wall.
You're always going to get people who are ticking the box. I don't think we're going to stamp that out ever. I think that most of the clients that I have come to me because they recognize that this is an area that they've never really done any formal work in from a professional development perspective or from a leadership capability perspective. And so I think part of the problem, Will, is that if people are forced to do stuff and they see it as a compliance tick the box activity, then that's always going to be the mindset. And I think that I'd be surprised if anyone working in this space hasn't come across that, at least once, not many times.
But you know what shits me? Sorry, do you know what pisses me off, right? Is that you do this training and you say, okay, this is what you got to, but there's no accountability. Do you know what I mean? So they might get trained, but then they're still out there being like an idiot or whatever, not following what they've just done. And it's like, okay, well, if you're going to do this training, right, we need to see how we're tracking those results. What are people doing to make sure that their training's working?
So I tend to not use the word training anymore because I think it's loaded, and I think that people have this perception that they're going to, do a couple of hours and then they can go out and tick the box, we've been trained.
So I got my cat here who's just come and said hello. What are you doing, Neto? She wants to get on TV.
Hilarious. So I prefer to talk about it as education rather than training. And what that helps me do as well is when you think about education, you think about learning. Learning doesn't really ever stop, right? So you need more than just a training or even series of. You actually need to look at the whole ecosystem that's operating. You need to look at how people are, how what they learn is reinforced. You need to look at what's going on in the workplace, whether that's in store or whether that's, out in head office. You need to, it's an ongoing conversation. It's never just a one-off thing, because this is all about behavior, like you said, and it's about mindset, and people need time to change their mindsets. And that's something my change career has taught me. Nothing happens overnight ever.
Can I just say, right? Sorry, Christina Floors. Is that have I pronounced that correctly? Sorry if I haven't. But like she said here, it should be a training for everyone in leadership. Yeah, totally agree. But you know what, right? Sometimes, but sometimes I meet like these organizations that have people in leadership that have that negative sort of approach to it, and it's sort of like, you shouldn't really be in leadership if that's the case. Do you know what I mean? Because you've got to be open to these things.
You do. And I guess my attitude to this has been go where the energy is. So first of all, you've got to work with the people who are ready to work with you, particularly in this space. And I think, is it Christina might have just put another comment in there, but it flashed up and then left. So
hang on, I'll put it back up. Hang on, I'll put it back up. So because high-performing neurospicy employees like me are hard to support if you don't. Totally, for sure.
And I think, this is such a partnership conversation, and this is my approach and how I've always approached working in this space is you're going to want to get the best out of people, and to get the best out of people, it's about understanding how they think, how they work, and what they need in terms of their support. But if you as a leader are not prepared to have that conversation, that's a really hard place to be for everybody.
But can I just go off what you were saying before? Like, I think a big thing is we do need to have that buy-in from that top leadership. If we're like going like, and the reason why I say this, I have done work for companies before where, the top leadership didn't give a stuff. It was just a box tick, and it was a waste of time.
Yeah. So the interesting thing that we're seeing in this space, though, in this sector, is if you think about quiet hours, they've actually come from within the organisation, the staff, or they've come from customers. So the really interesting thing here is that customers are saying we want this, or we're finding this difficult, and the organisations are responding. So, you know, I think, again, it's how do you, first of all, you've got to meet leaders where they are, and not every leader is going to be in a position where they're, you know, they're ready or capable to do this. But that's why I'm really excited about retail, is because customers are giving the feedback and staff are giving the feedback. And a lot of, like I said, Quiet Hour, which is one of the more widely adopted practices when it comes to this area, came from customers or staff. Customers saying, I can't bring my son, daughter, I can't bring my mother into your store because XYZ. So if a brand is truly customer focused and they care about loyalty and they care about their brand value, they listen, you know. Again, is it gonna change very quickly? And I think, Will, the fact of the matter is that as much as we all want to see change in this space, there will always be leaders and companies that are more ready to listen and be engaged. So I think we can't get frustrated by the people that don't. We can just put our energy to the people that do.
Who do. Yeah, totally. And I think that's the same in education. You know, if you look at what we're doing at Neurodiversity Academy with our endorsements, right? You know, if you don't want to be a neuro-inclusive learning organization, that's cool. Who are the ones who are? Let's send them all the people who want to go study there. And we may even find that because they're more supportive, not only neurodivergent people want to study there, probably other people might want to go there too, because they know it's inclusive.
Yep, absolutely. Because it's universal, right? So, yeah,
totally. There was something I was going to go off, but I can't even remember now. I got sidetracked. But anyway, we will probably.
You got sidetracked with the cat.
Oh yeah, no. She will be okay. She's okay. She'll be all right. Now, have you seen any great examples of retail businesses doing neuro-inclusive practices really well? What stood out to you? So you did touch base on that, but maybe we could look at this from the ones that we don't know. Maybe that you have walked into a place and gone, wow, I really like what they're doing there. Have you seen that before? Or is it all like, geez, man, we are way behind. Well,
I've probably seen the ones that the lighting's too harsh, or the smells are too strong. Or, I mean, I don't know what everyone thinks about Lush. I find it really hard going into a Lush store. I know that Lush do amazing stuff, but the smells are too strong for me. I have, to be honest with you, I can think of more examples where I wish they did things better as opposed to fabulous examples. But I think, look, Bunnings have their sensory map operating now. I think I'm a real fan of sensory maps. I'm a real fan of wayfinding. I can never find anything I'm looking for, despite the number of times that I've been in a place. I'm really frustrated in the supermarkets at the moment. I feel like supermarkets are changing things around way too many times for me personally, and I understand.
What do you mean by changing things around? Like, here used to be the honey, now the honey's down the other end there?
Yeah. And just, and again, it may very well be my brain, but just places I expect things to be are not there. And so it takes me an extra 15 minutes just to find something that should be easy to find. And I'm sure that's a very intentional strategy. So you're wondering it's why the milk's never at the front, why the milk's always at the back.
But do you know what, right? You know what annoys me as well? Or even like how say like you've got a Woolworths, right? You would think that all Woolworths would have a similar type of layout. But then you go to like a different Woolworths and it could be completely different. Yeah. That's what throws me.
And guess what? Some of the feedback I've had recently is Aldi don't change their footprint very often.
Oh, wow. So it's quite helpful.
So the middle aisle is always, the special buys. You always know that that's going to be in the middle aisle. So that's a really interesting point. And
that's true. Like whenever I go to Aldi, you're just like, yep, that's there, that's there, that's there, that's there. Boom, out.
Yep.
And
So
I
it's
do
interesting,
like
right?
that they have like the self-checkout at Aldi's now too.
Yeah, well, they've got self-checkouts everywhere, but I think the
Mm.
interesting thing about Aldi is it doesn't change. It's,
Mm.
apart from its special buys. Yes, it's just really interesting, right? And I'm sure there are people who are much smarter than I am doing all the analytics on this stuff. But it's just a really different lens to put on everyday experiences. So I am always looking out for the places that are doing cool stuff. So as I mentioned before, a few of the different areas, I think you'll see more sunflower friendly precincts that are welcoming that program, which, look, I'm a fan of that program. I know people are, and some people have had experiences where it depends on where you're using it. But in general, I think it's an amazing program, and I certainly promote the sunflower wherever I go because I've seen it work really, really well.
Actually, sorry, before we do go on, just Europe, right? What was the difference between Europe retail and Australia in compared to inclusive like workplaces, out of curiosity?
So I think Europe has got a bigger market to play with as well. So maybe they just do more innovative stuff. But I went into a Samsung store. I'm not a Samsung user, but I went into the store because I heard it was quite an extraordinary setup. So there's one Samsung store that's kind of in the centre in the old King's Cross area in London. If anyone knows about King's Cross, it used to be quite a dodgy area. It's been
probably rich as now.
Well, yes, and if you're a Harry Potter fan, then clearly you know.
Yeah.
9 3/4. But anyway, it used to be quite a dodgy space. It's been really redeveloped now. It's quite funky and fab, and there's a beautiful Samsung store there, and the whole store is just little areas. They've set up areas as if so they've got a kitchen, a fully decked out kitchen in there where you can actually see all the different technology devices and options and how they would work in a kitchen. Then they've got a lounge room, so it's very experiential, and I think that's quite a cool thing. You can kind of walk through it, you can have a play with stuff, you can see how things work and get your head around stuff. It's nowhere near an IKEA size, so you don't have to get lost. But IKEA is another really interesting example. So they're doing a lot of really good inclusive stuff as well, and yet I personally find an IKEA quite daunting.
Yeah, same. I hate going there.
Yeah, so
there's no quick out. There's no quick out.
But then there's no quick out. But then you could probably spend a whole day in there if that's what you want to do with your weekend. But so that Samsung store was really interesting. I think because Europe has a bigger playground, I think they've got much more experiential retail happening over there, and much more kind of almost like New York. New York would be one of those cities as well that has a lot of experiential type of retail. So you see much more of that, I think, overseas.
Interesting.
Swarovski will have, some beautiful, lots of crystal stuff happening, lots of glimmer stuff. And yet other brands are pretty much the same as here. So I think it really depends on the brand strategy and what they're planning, what they want to invest in as well.
Yeah, no, it would be quite a probably a lot of work goes into developing something like that, and like you said, getting the research behind it to make sure that it's going to it, because it is an investment.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day. How are they going to make money off that,
Yeah, and I think that's why the data and the research is really important, and going beyond just what people are looking for in products and services, and actually understanding more about their experience. And let's face it, neurodiversity is now such a mainstream topic in society. It's the right time. to be digging
Interesting.
further into this.
Interesting.
Yep.
Now, if you could give one piece of advice to retail leaders, who would? Oh, sorry. Let me read that again. If you could give one piece of advice to retail leaders who want to make their stores more neuro-inclusive, what would it be?
One piece. Can I give you two?
Yeah, you can give me two.
Maybe
Give me
three.
five
Maybe
if you want to.
three.
It's my
I'll give you
podcast.
three. I'll give you three.
Give me three, whatever you want to do, mate.
Education is the first, right? So
Okay.
become educated in this space. What does neuro-inclusion mean? What does it mean for your customers? What does it mean for your employees? Do the research is number two. So get some data behind the qualitative stuff, right? The anecdotes. And then the third is talk to your customers and talk to your employees. Hear it from them. Get the lived experience view. So that's my top three.
Okay, great, fantastic. Cool. Look, Nat, we're pretty much close to the end of the show today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. It's always good to have a chat. It's a bit unfortunate how Carlton's doing this season.
Don't. Sam Doherty just retired.
Are you joking?
No, but yes, we won't talk football.
Okay, I probably shouldn't end such an awesome podcast on a sour note, eh?
Thanks for bringing us down. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll bounce back.
Exactly. So, if there's people listening who want to connect with you, where would be the best place to find you?
Yep. So I'm a LinkedIn user. So if people are on LinkedIn, then please look me up. Or I've got heaps of information on my website, which is www.inc-change.com. I don't know if you want to put it out there somewhere in the chat or whatever.
Do you want to type it in? Because I'm dyslexic and I'll probably be crap at I think you might be able to if you put it in the private chat.
Yep.
If you put it in if you just go to the comments, right? And then you post a comment. If you just put that in there, you should be able to get that in there. Do you see it?
I can see the comments, but it's saying join the chat.
So if you go around to the so you can't see. Look, can you put it in the private chat for me then? Can you see the private chat?
I can. I'll put it in there.
Put it in there, then I'll copy and paste it in. Yeah, there we go. I will just copy that link and I will put it. All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, pardon me.
Yeah,
so going out to all of our platforms there. So www.inc. Oh, whoops. Some of them didn't go through but it's okay. So inc/change.com.au. And what I can do as well, I can probably put it up on the screen there if you're looking at it there as well. So please connect with Nat if this is something you'd like to explore more, or maybe you're a retailer or something like that. I think Nat's your go-to person in that, and definitely have a chat with that. So Nat, thank you so much for coming today. It's always a pleasure when I sit down with you. What's the plan for the rest of the evening?
Oh, I'll have some dinner. I don't know. I might actually just take a break. That'd be nice.
I thought you might go for a walk, take some pictures of some flowers.
It's freezing. It's freezing here.
From what I've been told, it is quite cold down there. But Nat, thank you so much for today. Really a pleasure. Thank you so much for that. And for all of our listeners, if you haven't already done so, please connect with Nat. Also, too, please connect with all of our social media platforms. Jump onto wherever you listen to your podcast and check out Neurodivergent Mates. My name's Will Wheeler. Till next time.
Thanks, Will.